Hey there! 65% mechanical keyboards have been really popular last year with options like the Hades 68 by Durgod, the Acco 3068, and the Ducky12 Mini SF. But some of us keyboard enthusiasts really want our keyboards as small as possible, and that leaves us with options like the GK64, where you get dedicated arrow keys in a 60% form factor. So today, we will build a GK64 from scratch, and the PCB we use has hot swap sockets, so we won't need to solder anything. So let's go. So taking a look at this PCB, it looks nice being all white and features RGB LEDs that are pre-soldered, but the most obvious feature with this PCB is the hot swap sockets, which means you can use any cherry style switch. Although I'd recommend 5-pin switches if you don't plan on using a plate to make sure your switches stay put. Speaking of switches, I went with Kale box burnt orange switches. So these are like heavy browns, they're tactile, with an actuation force of 60 grams and bottom out force of 80. I have 70 of them, so I'll have a few leftovers after the build. Then to the stabilizers, I got 2 sets, a regular one and another one with screws. Always wanted to try some of these, so we'll see how it goes. I also got a plate for the GK64 layout. Since my switches are only 3-pin, that ensures they will stay in place since they're not soldered. As for the case, I went with a regular GH60 cherry wood case. Surprisingly enough, the GK64 has most of its mounting holes at the right spot to use it with a standard case. And for the keycaps, I went with some nice Max Keys keycaps. These have an SA profile and they're double shot. They're made from ABS but are super high quality and durable, and their price reflects that quality. So now to the build. I started by installing the screw-in stabilizers. These are actually pretty nice and hold super well in there. One special thing about the GK64 is that it has a slightly narrower left shift key. It's 2 units wide instead. And that means that we only need 3 stabilizers in this case for the spacebar, enter, and backspace keys. Having a 1 unit wide right shift key also removes the need for a stabilizer there. I tried fitting the board in this case, but the screws from the stabilizers were hitting sides of the case, so I had to revert to using the normal stabilizers for the backspace and space keys. I could secure 5 screws out of the 6 threaded holes the case has. Not too bad considering it's not really meant for this PCB. I then lubed the stabilizers using a toothpick. I used dielectric grease to do so. Then I went ahead and installed all switches. These only have 3 pins, so I used the plate to secure them in place. That way all switches are kind of stuck together, mounted to a plate. So going one by one, making sure no pins are bent, I went through all those sockets, installing these switches. So after that, final touch is obviously to install the keycaps. These Max Keys keycaps come with a bunch of additional keys, and that's great to cover the slightly narrower left shift key. Same thing for the bottom right modifiers, which are 1 unit wide. And the only key I couldn't cover is the 1 unit wide right shift key. So I used the function key as that was the only key I had with the proper profile that made sense. So here it is, the final build. We'll go over the features of this now built keyboard. So this layout is quite interesting if you want arrow keys in a 60% form factor. The main compromise is the fact that the layout is non-standard and replacing keycaps will be harder, as you saw with this current build. The narrower left shift key actually shifts the whole row a bit, but it doesn't feel weird or anything surprisingly. It's only a 0.25 unit shift to the left, so it's not too bad. The worst thing about this layout is the 1 unit wide right shift key. It's quite hard to get used to and pretty easy to miss, so that might take you some time to always hit it correctly. Now to the switches. These feel great overall, but they're a bit too heavy for my taste. Next time, I'll definitely go with regular brown switches, either from Gateron or Kale. Then to the stabilizers. I'd go with different variants as both the screw-in and regular versions I got wobble a lot. The screw-in versions are a bit better, that's the stab I have on my enter key, but the others are pretty bad. They're worse than most production boards, so I'll definitely try to find good alternatives and put them down below. So typing on this keyboard is alright, better stabilizers would help, and for my taste, I think I'd go with lighter switches as well. This PCB also has RGB LEDs and they're pretty good, not the brightest I've seen, but they can be customized with the GK6X software quite in depth, and you also have a bunch of settings on board. Being part of the GK line of keyboards, you can remap keys on multiple profiles, change light effects, and create macros. This software is not super well crafted, it's not very obvious how to achieve what you want with it, but it's quite powerful, so overall, pretty cool. So how's that build? Well, great and not so great at the same time. This GK64S PCB is great, the only compromise I see is with the layout, the slightly shifted second row, paired with the 1 unit wide right shift key. Getting used to that layout might take some time, and finding keycaps will be harder too. Speaking of keycaps, these Max Keys SA keycaps are really nice, although they don't perfectly cover this unusual layout. They feel great, look great too, and the font looks amazing. Not having slits in close-shaped characters is also a nice plus. I would definitely go with different stabilizers for this build. Both kits I went with aren't that great and wobble quite a bit, even after I lube them. Again, these high-profile keycaps probably make it feel worse. And while these burnt orange heavy switches are great, they're smooth and are quite tactile, I think lighter switches better suit my taste. Finally, this wooden case is pretty good, even for this GK64 PCB, but going with an aluminum case would be a bit better for the clearance of my screw-in stabilizers, as the wooden case has a lip all around that bumps into those screws. So, a pretty cool PCB, depending on how you deck it out. You can build a pretty nice small form factor mechanical keyboard with a lot of possibilities paired with that software. So that's pretty much it for today. What do you think about this PCB? What do you think about this build? Do you think I should do more builds on this channel? Let me know down below. Also, I'll have links to all the parts I've used in this video down below, so feel free to check them out and help the channel at the same time. So thank you for watching, make sure you leave a like if you did, and if you didn't, just let me know why down below. Otherwise, don't forget to subscribe if you still haven't already, as I'll see you in the next video.